Blog Talk Radio.
Uh-oh, guess what day it is?
Julie.
Huh?
Julie.
Huh? Guess what day it is?
Guess what day it is? Guess what day it is?
Anybody? Anybody?
Mike.
Huh?
What day is it, Mike?
Huh? Woo-hoo!
Leslie, guess what today is? Leslie, guess what today is?
It's hump day.
Hump day!
It's hump day.
Hump day!
Hey, this is Tom Donelson at Donelson Files with another great broadcast of excellence, and want to kind of welcome everybody to the show. I'm Tom Donelson. I am the chairman of America's PAC and the project director and research associate for America's Majority Foundation and COCO.
It's Coco. I'm here. I obviously am a writer, and I host the show every Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Right now, I'm kind of feeling on the iffy side, so I'm going to let Tom do his thing.
Okay, what we're going to do here tonight, we're going to basically talk. We're going to follow up with there's some additional data from the Iowa caucus. We're going to talk about some of that. The acquittal and the political impact that that's going to be. I think it is going to have some political impact, but not what people think. And then there's some interesting points in the State of the Union last night, that I'm going to delve into because of the political ramification. And basically, and so we're going to, deal with some of that as well. And then we may, deal with some interesting stories here and there. So who knows what we're going to be doing up after that. And so, but I'll start off, first of all, obviously, I'm going to get back here. I'm going to apologize here because I'm trying to do about 5 things at one time. And okay, here's what I want to do here tonight. Because, like I say, the impact of Iowa is still going to have some ramification. What I wanted to kind of do, there's some additional, we're now about 85% of the numbers in. And I would say it's still too close to call on the popular vote and on the delegate side of the equation between Bernie Sanders and Pete Buttigieg. But here's some interesting thing, and this kind of gives you kind of an idea, where this thing, this at least the early part of the election is going. Now, Bernie Sanders so far has got close to about 38,000 votes. Pete's got about close to 34,000. So there's about a 4,000 vote difference. Elizabeth Warren's got about 18%, and she's got about 29,000 votes. Joe Biden is at almost 15%, about 23,000 votes. And Amy Klobuchar is about 20,000. But now you go to round 2. Now, the point I'm going to make here with round 2, because this is where people have to make a decision on the second choices. If you have, and it's so evident to me that Joe Biden and Amy Klobuchar had quite a few precincts where they didn't make the 15%. And when you look at those numbers, okay, again, Bernie's about 40,000, but Pete Buttigieg is about 39,000. So that 4,000 gap is closed to about 1,000. Now, and Elizabeth Warren is added about another 2,000 to her total, to 31,000. The interesting thing is that Joe Biden dropped about 3,000 votes from first round to the second round. That means about over 3,000 people, went and changed, basically had to go to another candidate. And in close shower, you're looking about 1,200. And when you look at the overall numbers here, Pete, basically a little over about 5,300 votes were people who switched over. 4,200 of those votes are people who were, my guess is going to be 4,200 votes probably went from Joe Biden and Amy to Pete Buttigieg. And then there's about another 1,000, and that's usually you're looking at Yang's. Let me give Yang here because, Yang had over 7,000 votes, almost 8,000 votes. And in the second round, about 6,500 votes, went to different candidates. Now, Bernie gained about, I should get Bernie's numbers here. Bernie's gained about over 2,000 votes, and Elizabeth Warren gained about 2,000 votes. So that's about 4,000.
Right.
So I'm kind of curious because obviously there's about 1,000 where Pete, with Pete, there's almost like 6,500 of Yang's people. And I'm kind of curious where they went. Because it's not, 65, it's, where they ended up going because it sounds like maybe they kind of gone in different directions. Because like I said, there's about 4,000 votes went to Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. About 5,500 went to Pete Buttigieg. So that's about 9,500 altogether that those three candidates added to their vote total. Yeah. So I'm kind of wondering. I'm kind of looking at this and saying, okay, if you got 6,500 Yang people, and Yang was probably had of all of the other candidates, he had the most significant amount. Basically everybody else was, other than Tom Steyer, had a couple thousand, and I'm okay, and so I'm sitting there wondering. I think Yang could have, you can probably make the case that Yang went different directions, not automatic. I would say it looks like the majority probably went to Sanders or to Warren, but I'm seeing maybe a few also went to Mayor Pete. And I will guess on the case of Steyer, most of them probably, I'm going to guess, went to either Sanders or Warren. That would be my guess. But I think the Yang is kind of an interesting because I know you've liked Yang, and you've kind of made that.
I'm not going to say I like a lot of his ideas, but I just think sometimes he acts really childish, with his antics about the whole Yang gang and stuff. So, that's pretty much what I have to say about, Andrew Yang.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm always kind of trying to fascinate because I'm trying to figure out, where Yang would follow into a lot of this. I would say the majority probably ended up with Bernie or Elizabeth. Well, a good portion of those people ended up, with Mayor Pete. So it's not hard to kind of try to identify, with the, how many were so-called progressives, how many were so-called moderates. But it's just kind of, you kind of figure, like I said, there's about, because at least 9,500 or close to 10,000 ended up Bernie, Pete, and Elizabeth with Pete basically getting probably the largest number of switchovers. And again, we're around 85%, so we still have more counting left. So this thing is still not exactly over. But at this point, you can make the case that Bernie Sanders is winning the popular vote and Pete Buttigieg is winning the delegates vote. Which tells me something else very interesting. It tells me something interesting that Mayor Pete had himself a pretty good ground game. Which kind of, And I guess, we weren't really talking about me. I view Sanders as having a good ground game. I knew Warren had a good ground game. But obviously Pete had enough of a ground game to know, okay, to get the people out to vote and win the delegate side of the equation, making sure that at certain precincts they dominated, picking selected precincts. So, from that perspective, I think it's pretty good. On Pete, and maybe the question I have to come in mind here because we're going to, a little bit, and very shortly, we're going to kind of talk about what I like the Bloomberg effect, what the Bloomberg effect could be on Super Tuesday.
Yeah.
And the question comes in play is, no, Mayor Pete gets out on the moderate, at this moderate lane. It starts building momentum. Now, you're not going to have the money, and we'll discuss this a little bit later, to match what Bloomberg's going to be doing. But he certainly is going to be able to have maybe name recognition of that new face. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see how this all turns out. As I stated yesterday, I think Joe Biden's in trouble. And I stated this a couple of days ago as well. I think Joe Biden's in trouble, and I think Amy Klobuchar, it's a good thing she has a day job with the U.S. Senate, because I don't see her going surviving beyond New Hampshire as a serious threat. Because she lives in Minnesota, she's the senator from Minnesota. It's a state right next to Iowa. So you would figure if there was a state that you could make some kind of a run at, Iowa would be that state. I don't see her making a run in New Hampshire. I could be wrong, but I just don't see it. So, this is Tom Donelson, Donelson Files, with Coco Konski on the Bachelor News Radio Network.
If you want to hear another view of the latest developments in Trump's Washington, listen to the Dr. Larry Show. Every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Dr. Larry is a former businessman, entrepreneur, college president, and author who provides background and context for current events and trends in politics, education, foreign policy, and religion from a conservative perspective. Tune in and hear the other side as Dr. Larry talks with Washington insiders exclusively on blogtalkradio.com and the podcast at thebachelorpadnetwork.com.
That's right. Dr. Larry follows our shows on this particular network on every Wednesday. Plus, if you go on the Bachelor News Radio Network, which you can get to the bachelorpadnetwork.com. If you want to get to the regular programming, you can certainly, every Monday through Friday, he's going to be on 1 a.m. in the morning following our show, and 11 a.m. on Eastern Standard Time. So don't forget the Dr. Larry Show on the Bachelor News Radio Network. All right. Now, okay, here's, to me, the interesting aspect that comes into play here. And it's this. The entire premise for a lot of people was, and we kind of got into this a little bit yesterday as well, but that, okay, basically Joe Biden using South Carolina as his firewall and moving forward, and certainly up until, let's say, recently he was ahead in the Nevada caucus, so the strategy would have been, okay, even if, let's say, Bernie or somebody else or Mayor Pete or Elizabeth Warren took Iowa and maybe a different person took New Hampshire, if Biden was able to hang on in Nevada, he would have that firewall in South Carolina and move right into Super Tuesday. And that's looking like, to me, in doubt in this regard. because he finished fourth. I mean, he did not, at this point, he doesn't have 15%. In fact, he's barely under 14% total. He's presently in the polls in second place in New Hampshire, but it would appear at this moment that in New Hampshire, Sanders is still in the lead. He's got basically overall in the Real Clear Politics Savage about an 8-point lead over Biden, and right on his heel at 14% is Buttigieg. And interesting enough, the most recent poll that came out today from Boston Globe is he's tied with Mayor Pete. Elizabeth Warren's at 10%, Klobuchar is at 6%. So Sanders has got about a 9-point lead. He's starting to surge a little bit. Another one, Emerson, and poll has him, in fact, as many as 20 points ahead of Biden and about 15 points ahead of Buttigieg. But what I'm seeing here is Buttigieg is making his move coming into second place, replacing Joe Biden as number 2. And my question will be, if Joe Biden ends up number 3 behind Mayor Pete, the question is going to be is how did the money guys sit back and say, we're still got faith in you, Joe. We'll wait till you get to South Carolina, or are they going to basically look for another savior? And I know we talked about Bloomberg, and I'll get you. I'm looking at Bloomberg's strategy is very simple. I'm going to spend money on Super Tuesday. And he's got the billions to spend, and he's basically spending it. And I'm going to ask this question of you, Coco, because I'm looking at California. Right now, the last poll was in the end of January, so it's about 3 weeks old. And he's got about 4%. Sanders has got about 26. Biden is still listed with, at that time, 21. Warren at 20. Buttigieg at 7 or 8. But Bloomberg, how many ads have you seen from Bloomberg in your market?
I've seen actually quite a few. Now that I'm noticing, I'll have my TV on or whatever, and the majority of the ads that I've seen have been Bloomberg.
Yeah.
I've seen maybe 2 or 3 from Bernie, some from Warren, but the majority of them have been Bloomberg. Yeah.
How about Stiers? Have you seen anything from Stiers in California?
I do, but every time I see it, I just kind of laugh because his ads are like, I mean, he has some good ads, the majority, but, there's something about Stiers that, like, I don't know.
Well, the thing is, Stiers, a lot of his ads are him. His ads are him talking right to the camera. It's his kind of talking to the voters to the camera. And I have to be honest with you. I mean, he doesn't seem the most personable person in the world. I mean, if you're going to have that guy, he's going to represent his case. I'm not sure he's the best guy to do that. And the other question I'm going to ask you is the ads that I saw on a national basis from Bloomberg, over the past, 3 weeks. As we talked about a couple of weeks ago, nobody. I mean, the word Democrat never showed up on the ad. And I wonder, is that still the case in the ads you're listening to? Are you still noticing that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And, and the question, because you kind of make this question yourself, you said, because the question I kind of asked you one time, do you trust this guy? And you kind of give me an indication that there's something like myself, that there's a double-edged game that he's trying to play here. it's almost like he's leaving himself options. If Bernie gets the nomination, would he actually go third party? But he certainly is not making the case he's running for a Democratic nomination, but he's running a general election ad campaign now.
Right.
Now, and the reason I'm asking in California because this is a big media market. It's an expensive media market. I did one campaign, and let me tell you, we're talking dollars that about double or triple any place else I've gone in this country, and those are the cheap ads. And so it's a very expensive market. And he's the one guy who basically is willing to spend, whatever it takes to get those ads. And that's why I'm kind of curious, because the question I would throw back, and I'm going to ask this question to you, is if Biden flops, do you see a portion of the Democratic establishment saying, okay, Mike, save us from Bernie? Your thoughts?
For me, it's not whether or not, Bernie should be president or anything like that. Like I said in the past, my problems lie within his supporters a lot of the time. A lot of them, even though I've got into countless arguments with Bernie's supporters about the whole Bernie and bust. And to me, I think it's the time to kind of get together and, vote, all these other candidates, Steyer, Bloomberg, Warren, they've all said they're going to vote, whoever becomes the presidential Democratic nominee, that's who they're going to vote for, even if it's not them. And I know a lot of people on Bernie's side aren't okay with that, but I think that was one of the reasons why we have Trump in the first place, is because of the whole Bernie or bust. I'm not saying I'm not going to vote for Bernie. If he's the Democratic nominee, then of course I'm going to vote for him. But right now I like Elizabeth Warren. I would love a Warren Castro ticket. That's something I would love to see. Yeah. But as far as the whole, Bernie or bust thing, I think it's stupid. I really do.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Here's what I'm going to, because, the more I'm thinking about this whole deal, because here's the thing. No political observer, or most of us, have never lived through a brokered convention where you literally have, usually in my lifetime, it's usually solved by the time they get to it. And over the years, there's been enough, there's always been somebody who was able to get that, get the bull by the horn and get enough votes to get that first, round, the first ballot victory. 2008, for example, by end of May, June, Obama clinched everything. Everybody knew at that point, okay, he's got enough delegates to get this thing done. Romney in 2012, and even Trump, by the time May or June rolled around, the delegate count was already there. He was already there. There was not going to be no brokered convention. This year, I'm not going to discount a brokered convention, because even if Biden falls flat, you still have Mayor Pete. You're going to have Sanders. Bloomberg will make some noise. And you're going to have 4 or 5 candidates basically kind of jostling around and splitting a lot of these votes. And it's a distinct possibility that you get to May or June. And, you may just have, one candidate, I'm going to say most likely Sanders, with the highest number of delegates. But you're going to have people like Bloomberg, Pete, maybe Elizabeth Warren, if she sticks around.
I mean, one thing about
Tom.
Mike Bloomberg, that really amuses me is that he spent hundreds of millions of dollars of his own money just to take ads on Trump. Like, I think I find that hilarious. I mean,
yeah.
When I was reading about an article from that, I was laughing because it's like it's great. I mean, what better way to taunt somebody but with having more money than Donald Trump?
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's the thing. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's like I say, Bloomberg is running a general election campaign. That's what he's running right now, a general election campaign. And I've always thought he's had two ideas behind him. One, he's left himself the option that if Bernie Sanders is the nominee, walking out the door, boom. The second aspect, and this is the one, is building the party post-2020. One individual, made a point to me and said, people don't realize how many people over the last couple of years have benefited from this guy's contribution. Mayors, congresspeople, senators. This guy has put a lot of bucks in the campaign. This year he's going to do the same thing. Even if he doesn't get the nomination, he's going to spend money on the Senate races and the House races. And this is what I've told my fellow Republicans, and very clearly. I said, don't think for 1 second the Republican Party can outspend Bloomberg if he puts his mind to it, or Tom Steyer. It's that simple. And the money is going. The money is going to be there. So it's kind of like this. You make a good point. He's going after Trump. He's basically running a general election campaign. It's almost like this above the fray. And that's the reason why I go back to the aspect of savior. I'm going to be your savior. I can be your savior because he's doing that above fray. He's, and we're going to kind of keep that in mind. And we'll come back to after this is Tom Donelson, Coco Konski, because I also got some other theories that comes in how all of this could play out.
Since Buffalo Wild Wings is always open late, here are a few things you'll enjoy. Buzzer beaters, wings in 21 signature sauces and seasonings, and great deals on food and beer. Grab select domestic draft beer starting at $4. $4 shareables like street tacos, fried pickles, chili queso dip, mozzarella sticks, and roasted garlic mushrooms, and deals on select liquor and house cocktails. Phew, that's a mouthful. Catch all of the late night action. Buffalo Wild Wings. Wings, beer, sports. Offers and participation vary. Please drink responsibly. Void where prohibited.
Okay, this is a special message to Buffalo Wild Wings. We gave you a freebie. You come on this show, you're basically going to have 1 million people on the Bachelor News Radio Network to listen to. So consider this your gift. But I do love Buffalo Wild Wings because not only do you get great drinks, they have some. I love the Wild Wings, but it's the one bar you can literally get any sporting event that you want. Any sporting event you want. Like tonight, my wife, after the Dr. Larry, I'm going to be leaving after the programming tonight to go to Buffalo Wild Wings so we can watch the Celtics on one TV, University of Iowa another TV, and then the Cleveland Cavaliers, which my wife likes, on yet a third TV. So, and speaking of sports, this is Tom Donelson, Coco Konski, Bachelor News Radio Network.
Join Barry Barnes for Locker Talk on the Bachelor Pad Network as he presents NFL news and evaluates players. Fridays at 9 a.m. Eastern at blogtalkradio.com.
Yeah, Locker Talk, Fridays, Saturdays on the Bachelor News Radio Network, plus 9 a.m. on this particular network. So stay tuned. And if you want to call in, and by the way, and comment on anything we do tonight, 646-929-0130. 646-929-0130. And don't forget Locker Talk for some great discussion on the NFL that you just don't hear anywhere else. Okay, now. Yeah, and by the way, I wanted to say tonight, Coco's being a trooper. She's not 100%. And I thank you, Coco, for basically hanging on and doing your thing with us.
Of course.
And
by
Go
the
ahead.
way, I don't know if you guys remember me talking to you last night about this Christian activist who plans to sue the NFL. Well, some more stuff came out about this. So Dave Daubenmuir is taking things even further. So on his Past Assault podcast, he said that he plans to sue the NFL because the halftime show threatens to prevent him from getting into the kingdom of heaven.
Okay.
And Tom, you want to know how much this guy is suing for?
How much?
Take a guess.
$15 million.
$872 trillion.
Why am I getting the feeling that this guy is not playing with the full deck?
Because he's not. It's completely obvious, And this is an actual quote from him. You guys are ready for this, right? This is an actual quote. Could I get into a courtroom and say viewing what you put on that screen put me in danger of hellfire? Could the court that doesn't apply here because the right to produce porn overrides your right to not watch it? Yeah, well, you didn't tell me I was going to watch it. You just brought it into my living room. You didn't tell me there were going to be crotch shots. That's discriminatory against the value I have in my house. You can't just do that. I want to sue them for about $867 trillion. I mean,
so let me get this straight, because here's what I'm hearing. And ladies and gentlemen, we have now gotten into one of our strange stories. So
we did.
We got into one of our strange stories, and this is definitely a strange story. Because here's what I'm hearing. Here's what I'm hearing from this guy. Is and if I catch this thing correctly, he's basically saying, you guys are making me sin and think impure thoughts about J-Lo and
Correct.
And Shakira. And so, therefore, I'm going to sue you because you're making me think impure thoughts.
You got it.
Yeah, of course. Though, if he was Catholic, he could go to confession and say, "Hey, I had impure thoughts about J-Lo," and the priest would say, "You've been forgiven." Say 3 Our Fathers, 4 Hail Marys, a couple of Glory Bees, and you're on your way. But obviously, he would rather go the suing route in $867 trillion.
Yep.
Wow. Like I say, I'm going to say here that this individual is certainly not playing with a full deck. As I stated last night, I have to be, stated last night, I didn't, and I was the only guy on the panel because I know other people actually enjoyed the show, or even if they didn't enjoy the music, they enjoyed the dancing. I found the music to be tedious. I found the performance to be so what? I've seen this before. Whatever. And I was totally bored by it and was waiting eagerly for the second half of the game to begin. And I appear to have been a minority of at least last night's program with Elizabeth and Pam and you. So, yeah. So we ran right into the strange stories. I'm going to add just a couple of quick things, and then we're going to go into the impeachment and the impeachment which ended today. And again, here's a thought that popped in my mind, and it's been popping in my mind for a while. And I kind of, and you make the case for Elizabeth Warren. I'm going to say if Bloomberg or Biden or even a Mayor Pete wins the nomination on the moderate wing, the so-called moderate lane of this equation, you've got, as you say, the Bernie boys and all of the Bernieites and what I call the Alexander Cortez-ites and everybody else. What would they do, with a Bloomberg billionaire winning the nomination, or Mayor Pete winning the nomination, or Biden somehow another survives and wins the nomination? Don't be shocked if the VP will be one of the following two people. Stacey Abrams, and I picked Stacey because she's outside the box and she's on the progressive wing of the party, or they bring back Elizabeth Warren as the VP. And they basically say, Alexandria Cortez, write the platform. You can write it the platform. We'll give you the VP slot. What do you think of that?
I don't think it's totally out of the realm. Like I said, I think I would love a Warren Castro ticket. I think that's probably the ticket I that's my dream ticket that I would have. But I don't know. I don't know if anybody would choose to be the VP. I don't know.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. If you got a broker convention, let's just talk theoretically. You got a broker convention. You got a broker convention. And you're making deals left and right. You got at least, because here's the thing. There's 500, 600 super delegates that cannot vote on the first ballot. They have to wait till the second ballot. They may be the power brokers. And my question I would throw back is, you go that first round and nobody gets ahead. Let's just say you got Bernie with about, as the number one ballot, but significantly far off, not close enough for a first round ballot, or even if he is close. There's going to be anybody but Bernie, feeling there. And there's going to be Pete's going to still be there. Bloomberg may be there. Elizabeth Warren may be there. You're going to have 3 or 4 other people there with enough delegates. And the question comes into play when these super delegates get together, and you're going to have literally a fight on the street, on the floor. I don't mean this in a literal sense, but in a figurative sense, between the socialist side of the party led by Cortez and others, and Bernie and his supporters, and those, let's say, on the more establishment type. You're going to see this. It's going to be there right in front of all the cameras. And my question I would throw back is, to keep the party together from splintering before you get to the general election, one side's going to have to give the other side something, and that's going to be the VP. And if Elizabeth Warren, if somebody goes to Elizabeth and says, Elizabeth, do you want Donald Trump to be president, or would you like to be the VP? I think she say yes. I think she'll say yes.
I think she'll say no.
I know. I think she'll say yes. If she wants to get her agenda passed, and if she's assured that she'll have some say in any administration, she'll say yes.
Well,
I would not be shocked.
We're going to have to see.
I will not be. We'll have to see. I'm going to say this: if she's offered it, my view is she would take it. And my other view would be is they will pretty much allow the Bernieites to write the platform. Of course, the other alternative is you end up with Bernie Sanders as the VP in such circumstances. Now that's kind of a wild thing, but it's there. There's so many different possibilities of what's going to happen. I just think we may be witnessing something we have not seen, a possible broker convention. And you're looking, and think of it this way. We don't have those political bosses like you did in the days of the 40s and the 50s, where people get behind a room somewhere and say, okay, let's start making deals. Let's start, seeing who does what, who gets what. You're not going to see that. Nobody has had that kind. You don't have that kind of authority. Even the super delegates are not that powerful. And you're going to have, and basically, nobody in the last half a century will have the kind of experience to deal with that kind of a broker convention. So people are going to basically be rewriting the rules on the fly. It'll be fascinating, interesting. This is Tom Donelson, Coco Conscan, the Bachelor News Radio Network. I'm going to have a few thoughts on the acquittal today. We do have, I am going to read something from a friend of mine. I'll comment, and then Coco will comment as well afterwards. And then we're going to move on to some aspects of State of the Union. And then then depending how much we got left of the show, we'll go from there. This is Tom Donelson, Coco Conscan, Bachelor News Radio Network.
Hey, this is LA Bachelor reminding you, if you're looking for real discussion on sports, politics, religion, and other topics, you need to join us on Mondays at 6 p.m. Eastern at WCOMFM.org, on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. at blogtalkradio.com/LA-Bachelor, and on Thursdays at the same web address. Follow us on Facebook at Pad Nation, on Twitter, Pad Nation, the number 2 at Twitter, LinkedIn, and you can email us with your requests, your comments, your concerns, anything you want at our email address at LABachelor with a T, BATCHELOR 40 at gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook and Pad Nation, Instagram, and of course, if you miss any part of our broadcast, make sure you go to thebachelorpadnetwork.com and listen and enjoy the Bachelor Pad.
TheBachelorPadNetwork.com. You can get the Bachelor News Radio Network, the Bachelor News Radio Show, 6 to 8 every day on the Bachelor News Radio Network, Monday to Friday, also on Monday on WCOM. So if you're right now listening in North Carolina, in the Research Triangle Park area, in particular Chapel Hill, because we all know there's Chapel Hill, you can listen to the Bachelor News Radio Show Mondays as well. And, of course, on this network, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Tuesday following our show and Thursday 6 to 8. So many opportunities to listen to the Bachelor News Radio Show on the Bachelor News Radio Network. Okay. I'm going to read something from Laura Bice. I'm going to give my opinion, and then I'll let Coco give her opinion. And then we're going to kind of move on quickly to State of the Union. And then there's one last thing I do want to hit on that we didn't get a chance if we got time, and that is I would love to have your opinion on Harry and Merkel leaving for Canada. All right. Okay, Tom. This is from Laura Bice. Would you find it to recognize that one honorable Republican found his conscience today, recalled and upheld his constitutional oath, Romney? I hope and pray that you admit that he stood for what is right and that he did not do so for any seated reason than a righteous one. We're living in a time of heroes, villains, and fools. Each of us do have a choice. Have a great show. No, I'm not going to congratulate Mitt Romney. I'm going to take a little bit of time here. And Coco, you may want to take a couple notes for your counter. And here's what I'm going to say is, I'm going to make a few points here and put it in this capacity. Number one, from day one, there's basically been a move to be rid of Donald Trump through the impeachment process, whatever word you want to say. It almost started day one of his administration. Here's what we know to be true. Based on the 4 different Inspector General's report, the Mueller report, 2 congressional reports have been validated by all of the Horowitz reports. The congressional hearings on impeachment by the 17 witnesses handpicked by Adam Schiff is this. Number 1, we know for certainty that the Trump campaign was investigated and spied on while he was running for office. We know that the probable cause, the Steer dossier, was pretty much false. We also know very clearly that they continue to use this, and that we know from the vice courts themselves finally admitted the warrants used to spy were pretty much illegal. Which basically means somebody is going to end up in jail eventually on all of this, whether it's going to be some low-line FBI or middle management FBI, or it goes all the way to the top to Lisa James Comey. We also know, now that's what we know for a fact. We also, by the testimony that was presented by Adam Schiff's hand-picked 17 witnesses, that none of them could make the case that they actually heard a quid pro quo. Now, whether or not you believe there's a quid pro quo, they didn't make the case. They also made the case, at least 2 of them, that there was concern about Hunter Biden's involvement with the Ukrainian company. They also noted that Donald Trump actually did more for the Ukrainians against the Russians than the previous administration. The fact number 2 that we know, whether or not Trump wanted it, he in the end didn't follow through. In other words, there was no public announcement by the Ukrainian government for any kind of investigation. If that was the goal, it didn't happen. And number 3, if you listen to Pam Bundy's presentation, she makes a pretty good case there was something to investigate with the Bidens. And whether it's legal or illegal, that's a debatable point. But what's not debatable is something did happen there. Did President Trump have a right to investigate? I'm going to make the case he does. Others, including some Republicans, will say that it was unseemly. But it was also unseemly to investigate Donald Trump during the 2016 election and continue that. So to me, and after we get all this, we get everybody's opinion on this. I'm not going to congratulate Mitt Romney for doing a good job on this. I think he was totally wrong. I don't know if he has that much disgust of Donald Trump that he chose to do so, because Susan Collins didn't do it, Lisa Murkowski didn't do it, Lamar Alexander didn't follow through, didn't do it. Now, while they had questions on the methodology, whether or not the call was correct, they do not. They did not believe it was an impeachable offense. I will make the case that he had reason to investigate. They would disagree. But nobody make the argument this was an impeachable offense. And I think there's a better case for that. Now, and I will talk about a little bit later Adam Schiff, because quite frankly, he got his butt handed to him by the Trump defense team for how much.
No, he didn't.
Oh, he did. It wasn't even close.
No, he didn't. Come on.
All right. Okay.
Okay. You want to hear my side? Okay.
Yeah, I want to hear you.
Well, 52 Republican senators, including Bitch McConnell, because that's what he's now named, according to me, from now on, let Trump off the hook for abuse of power. Now watch them act all surprised when he takes that as a permission to do, in fact, whatever I want. And he will remain stained with the mark of impeachment forever. Not only that, but every country in the world right now, if you're listening, foreign interference in a U.S. election is now totally acceptable here. If you want to get rid of the moron in the White House, you know what to do. It's called voting. I think this whole thing, them not wanting to call witnesses, but then where are the witnesses? Well, you didn't want them to be called. So you can't have it both ways. Mitt Romney, I was wrong about you. You stood up when no one else did, and I appreciate that. I think he's the only one in, the GOP who actually has balls to do something about it. So these are my thoughts on this whole impeachment, this whole inquiry, and, Trump got away with it.
No, actually, like you say, there was no impeachable offense. It's still looking for an impeachable offense. I totally disagree with that, and they didn't make that case. Adam Schiff did not make that case at all, and he got his – and I mean, you may think – I'm going to just say, if you look at the transcripts and you look at how the presentation, if I'm Nancy Pelosi, I would be irritated at Adam Schiff and Jerry Nadler for the case they did put forth. Is they not – when you insult – the very people who are going to be your jury, which they did repeatedly. And Adam Schiff, to me, is a pencil-neck liar. He's been lying for 3 years. He lied about the Russian collusion. He consistently lied about the Russian collusion. Always said, I got evidence, when he knew there was no evidence. His report that he submitted has already been debunked and discredited. He met with the whistleblower. He lied, and when he said back and said, I didn't meet with the whistleblower, he not only knows who the whistleblower is, he worked and cooperated with the whistleblower even before the whistleblower went to the Inspector General. This is about as weak of a case you're ever going to see. Nobody gave Donald Trump permission to do anything he wants. And let's not, as I stated, we already know he was spied on and he was investigated with far less evidence and probable cause, which now the Horowitz report pretty much acknowledged, which the Department of Justice finally came out and said, and which the FISA courts came out and basically said illegal. And these are all connected. And when you sit back and you threaten a foreign government to quit an investigation of a company in which your son's making hundreds of millions of dollars, and there may even be evidence of money laundering through a third country in the millions to the same son, you're not in a position to be sitting back and saying, I'm not above investigation. I'll let you finish there.
What I said, if you think there's nothing left to be said on impeachment, Kamala Harris just gave a really brilliant speech. I would suggest you all watch it. Remember these words from last week. There will be no true acquittal if there's not a fair trial. And what happened is we did not receive a fair trial. You can't be blocking out witnesses, for their own little benefit. I think Bolton should have testified. I absolutely think he should have testified. And now Trump, tweets out this little montage campaign ad about him running indefinitely until the year 2000, the year 2100. This guy, he's a mob boss. That's all he is. He's a wannabe mob boss, and that's all he'll ever be. And that's my point. That's my official thoughts on this.
No. All right. Okay. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to save the comments on the State of the Union for sometime next week, because there were some very significant, important aspects that we do need to discuss, both, let's say, where the Republican Party is going, where the Democratic Party is going, and how it's all going to play out. And we'll wait. But let me ask you this question, and let's go to a little bit lighter subject. Harry and Merkel, what's your thoughts on this, the royal family? I mean, we haven't had a chance to really talk about it. Or do you even care?
I don't really care. You know, I mean, it is what it is. I know there's a lot of animosity towards Meghan Markle and, you know, them leaving, you know, but like, first of all, it wasn't like last time this happened. I mean, you know, the only similarities is that she is a divorcee. But let's face it, Harry was. It would have been a long time for Harry to be crowned. So, I think he understood that and he knew that. So for him to give up, you know, these titles, it is a huge thing. It's a very big deal. But I don't really think it's shocking because he was so close to his mother, Diana, and you guys, you know what happened to her. And I think he didn't want the same thing for his wife.
What? Well, what do you mean by that? I mean, what do you mean by that?
He didn't want her to be destroyed by the paparazzi. He didn't want her, you know, he sees a lot of similarities in Diana and Meghan. You know, they both do so much charity work, and he doesn't want to, I guess he's choosing, basically what I'm saying, he's choosing his marriage over his royal duties. That is what I'm saying.
Okay. Okay, let me kind of throw a quick point here because I understand what you're saying. But on the other side of the equation is that when you're married into that royal family, you do so with the anticipation and understanding the royal duties that go with it. It's not just, you know, royal duties that go with it. And again, I'm more not so much fascinated because, you know, we don't have the royalty side of the equation, but the point I would, you know, but there is that aspect, you know, when you marry into this family, it's not like this was not known before you married into the family.
Right.
That indeed, this is part of the deal. And this is part of me that says, okay, I get it. I understand we're just talking about Coco on this, but there's a part of me that said, you know, you married into this. You went into the idea that this is part of the deal. If I'm going to marry into this family, this is part of the deal. That I'm going to be dealing with all of this, with not just the paparazzi and all this, but you're also dealing with the royal duties of the crown. And that to me is that, you know, maybe that's, you know, if there's anything that bothers me about it, it's more of that is that aspect of it. You can't really divorce yourself. And even though, you know, he may not have the royal titles, I'm not sure, you know, what the appropriate punishment is for that. Okay. On that, but the point I'm going to make here, is this: is that, you know, this is part of the responsibility that you have when you're dealing with royalty, and I think, you know, sometimes I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is, hey, you married into this family. This is what was required of you. It's not like you can walk away and be on your own per se. And even though Harry may not have the royal, I'm not sure how, you know, what they do. The reality is he's still going to be Prince Harry. I'm going to let you give one last word, and then we're going to go ahead and end this particular show.
Well, I mean, I think I pretty much said what I needed to say. I don't really have a last word.
All right. Well, in that case, this is the Donelson Files. Tom Donelson and Coco Konski. We want to thank you very much on the Bachelor News Radio Network. And if you want to get listen to this show and any other show, here's what you do. You go to the BachelorPadNetwork.com. The BachelorPadNetwork.com. network.com. You get into the Bachelor News Radio Network. And you can basically get any of our great programming. You know, the Dr. Larry Show, our show, the Bachelor News Radio Show, any of these shows. And we want to say, so again, thank you very much. This is Tom Donelson saying good night for the Donelson Files. We'll be coming right back shortly with the Dr. Larry Show.
When you hear that trumpet, you know it's the Dr. Larry Show on the Bachelor News Radio Network, and I'm Dr. Larry Fedewa, your host for the hour. Tonight we're going to start with a few comments on the State of the Union, which is had all the elements really of a Shakespearean drama. The setting was filled with tension and made for television. The primary picture showed the hero flanked on his right by his loyal acolyte, Vice President Mike Pence, and on the left by his archenemy, the little old lady of the left, Nancy Pelosi, as he eloquently, at times even poetically, told America what he had accomplished with the responsibility that the voters had given him while his enemies had been trying to destroy his presidency. And it was quite a list. He has enhanced every facet of America's welfare, from repatriating American manufacturing for both economic and national security reasons, to job creation, trade treaties, rebuilding the military, upgrading veterans' health care, protecting our borders, to encouraging respect for the law enforcement community, protection of the right to bear arms, to the right to life of the unborn, the rights of parents to choose the education of their own children, to the fight against opioid addiction, human trafficking, and many more issues. Half the room went wild, while the other half sat stoically on their hands, grim-faced and cold-hearted. They were represented symbolically by the action of the little old lady of the left, as she sat in full view of the audience and the camera. Watching her was fascinating. Most of the time she sat there with a slight scowl on her face, occasionally shaking her head at some statement by the speaker. Her torture had started when the president ignored her outstretched hand after he handed her a copy of his speech. One could hardly blame him for refusing to shake the hand which had tried to kill his office, his reputation, and the rest of his life. He was not going to forgive and forget this sworn enemy. After that, she steadfastly avoided standing to applaud each remarkable achievement being noted, frequently squirming, sometimes trying to get Mr. Pence's attention, which was also ignored. Then came the salutes by Mr. Trump to a series of individuals. First she hesitated. Then she realized that she was not against these heroic people, so she jumped up and applauded. Thereafter, she could be seen each time trying to decide whether to join the room or not. One not was the president's attention to a 2-year-old child who had been the first survivor of a premature birth at 21 weeks. A poignant moment not shared by Grandmother Pelosi. In the end, she stood and ceremoniously tore her copy of the speech in half, in full view of the camera and the nation. A fitting end by a hateful woman toward this hated man. Indeed, the most impressive feature of the entire Democrat Party in that hall last night was the tangible hatred toward the president and all he stands for, and by extension, all those people who stand with him. This attitude was crystallized by the president's attention to Rush Limbaugh, who was sitting in the gallery next to First Lady Melania Trump. Limbaugh announced last Monday that he has been diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. When Mr. Trump announced the presentation to Mr. Limbaugh of the Presidential Medal of Freedom to the popular but visibly astonished 69-year-old broadcast pioneer, some of the Democrats started shouting, "No, no." Their hatred might be understood since the younger ones were raised by liberal parents who considered Rush Limbaugh the arch enemy of all that was sacred to them. But there is no denying that he is the most listened to radio host of all time, and the father of a whole new genre called conservative talk show hosts, of which I, frankly, am one. It was just not the time or place to demonstrate against this stricken giant. In all, the State of the Union speech by President John Donald Trump was perhaps the most riveting, dramatic, and exciting speech of its kind in recent memory, if not of American history. And there was a postscript. In the ultimate irony, the first Democrat response featured the governor of Michigan, whose theme was that Democrats get things done while the Republicans just talk. This after 75 minutes of listening to the president give us a list of promises kept, which may be the longest and most comprehensive list of actions by any president in American history. In contrast to the do-nothing Democrats, she exemplified the fact that the Dems simply cannot seem to hear anything this president says. And that is my opening statement for tonight. We have as our guest tonight the well-known broadcaster and speaker, motivational speaker, Larry Freeze. Larry, welcome to the Dr. Larry Show. So, we will be looking for Larry, and when he comes on, I'll have to admit that I wrote that article at 6:00 this morning, and I thought that a lot of the details and the substance of that speech would be covered by a lot of other people. I didn't realize at the time that today a lot of the commentary would in fact be about Mrs. Pelosi's response to the speech. So it turns out that I was actually on to one of the more popular reactions to the speech. But there was a lot of discussion, frankly, in the speech about a whole list of things that this president has actually accomplished in 3 years, really, and frankly, a record that would eclipse most of what other presidents in recent years, anyway, have done in 8 years. So, if as soon as we get a chance to talk to Larry Freeze, we will let him give us his take on all of these developments. In the meantime, this is the Dr. Larry Show on the Bachelor News Radio Network.
You might know me, I'm 50 Cent. You may follow my tweets, my Facebook friends. Odds are fewer than 6 degrees separate us. We're that close. What's crazy is 1 in 6 don't know where their next meal is coming from. These are your co-workers, your neighbors, your friends. Hunger's too close for us to ignore. So visit feedingamerica.org/hunger and find your local food bank to see how you can make a difference. From one close friend to another, let's do this. I'm 50 Cent, and together we are Feeding America.
A message from Feeding America and the Ad Council.
You're listening to the Dr. Larry Show on the Bachelor News Radio Network, and we are waiting for our guest of the evening, Mr. Larry Freeze. And as soon as he has a chance to dial in, we'll be getting his take on all of the issues that we had going on today. In the meantime, I think we can talk to Tom Donelson. Tom, would you like to share some of your thoughts with us?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Here's the thing. What I saw last night was very kind of an interesting, because I'm going to view it in three different ways. The first thing was the political strategy, what we're going to be looking at and seeing and doing. Donald Trump and the people around him have come to the conclusion you need to expand their majority. And they're going to go in three different directions. And you can see that. Go into the minority community and make the case that our policies are working. Van Jones, who was on CNN, made a very kind of an interesting point when he said he told his fellow CNN experts, look, you better understand one thing. This guy is producing results in the community, in the black community. You can't assume we're going to keep, that he's not going to make inroads. And the point that I make this point right now. If Donald Trump gets about 15% of the black voters with about a similar voter turnout, this is a high range, but certainly reasonable based on the polls you're seeing. And you're looking at 35 to 38% Hispanics, even with a slight increase. You're looking at an increase among those two groups of 1 million to 1.3 million, 1.5 million maybe, give or take. Those votes, the additional votes from 2016, those are votes that will be in key battleground states. You can, under those kind of circumstances that those occur, you're talking, forget North Carolina, forget Georgia, forget Florida, forget Pennsylvania, forget Michigan, forget Ohio. You may even end up with Nevada and Colorado. New Mexico's in play. Minnesota is in play. The Electoral College goes right back to Donald Trump. And he's basically gearing that. The second aspect, we go toward apparent leave and his emphasis on the health care, and particularly the Grassley bill. That's going after some of that suburbanites who are looking for results, in particular on the health care issue, which is, by the way, the number one issue. And then, obviously, back to his base with immigration. So, in effect, this was a document both on just accomplishments, but also gearing easily to the political strategy. In other words, the same strategy I've been discussing in my books and articles for about 10 years.
So you're basing that on the polling data?
Well, yeah, actually, I'm basing it on two things. I mean, the polling data. I mean, if you look at, let's say,
I mean, I understand what's at stake, but
yeah.
it seems to me you're assuming that, or at least that you're projecting that this is really going to happen.
Well, let me put it. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm going to say it's a distinct, realistic goal to see happen. If you're in a Trump campaign, this is what you're looking at. The possibilities. Hey, if we get this right, this is what we could do. I'm not saying it's guaranteed. I'm just simply saying the possibility exists. If you look at some of these polls, if you look at favorability, unfavorability, he's getting between 15 to about 25, 30% blacks approval, depending on which poll. Now, I don't tend to look at the 30% as accurate, but the 15 to 20% of provable side of the equation, if you're getting that kind of approval, how much of that do you translate into actual votes? In the Hispanic side of the equation, he's getting certainly beyond the 30% mark of approval when you look at some of these approvable side of the equation. So that, yeah. So these are not unrealistic. I'm not giving unrealistic numbers here. I'm giving you numbers that are not just obtainable, but in the case, for example, 2004, 16% of blacks voted for George Bush in the state of Ohio.
Right.
So,
well,
these are
think
not.
I think that there's a very good chance that he will take a sizable slice of the black middle class, because they're actually motivated a lot by the same kinds of situations and conditions that the white middle class is, namely jobs and take-home pay and rising wages and a tightening labor market. And frankly, they are the segment of the black community, particularly in the cities, that is the most likely to vote too, because a lot of the people in the ghettos don't vote much. So
I'm not on the inner city. I'm going to disagree with that. You go back to 2016. You go look at the voter turnout, in particular among young blacks, and those in those urban centers. They swamped Romney. So don't make that assumption that they're not going to show up to vote. I'm just saying, because you go ahead.
But don't you think that they are far more likely to stick with the Democrats?
Well, I'm not saying. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. When I say 15%, that still means 85% are still Democrats. What I'm stating is you get a slight increase on the peripheral side of the equation, on that outlier side. It makes a big difference. You see what I'm saying? It's not just about, and so that's the point that I'm making. And I'm saying that it could be done. I'm just simply saying, the possibility exists. I mean, here's the thing. This is a point that I've had, a lot of different conversations. Even, let's say, among, blacks, those on the left, and I've had those on the right, and those in the middle, and they've all kind of made a point to me. Like, for example, if you go look at faith and religion and belief in God, blacks tend to weight. They have the highest among those numbers. So, as L.A. Bachelor's noted on his show on a few occasions, there is a conservative element within the black community that exists. So it's
no
not.
Question.
And my point is, you look at last night's programming, and you go look at the first ad in the Super Bowl. There's no doubt where he's going with it. He's going to say, "Look, I'm the guy who's going to bring. We got the first step path." One of the things he did last night was very bright, I thought it was good on his part. He said, "Thank you, Congress, for helping me get this thing done."
Right.
But the point is very simple. He can point to accomplishments that exist. And whether or not he's the right messenger, you can debate that point. But the reality is he understands the number crunching game that I've been detailing on my show. I've detailed it in a lot of the books I've written and everything else. These are the numbers that exist that you guys start looking at if you expect to win. So.
Well, I certainly agree that the chances of a much greater support from black. I think the people are a little bit simplistic though when they suggest that there is a black community. I think there's more than one. I think there's the rural. There's still the rural black community, if you will, and then there's the inner city black community, which is not really, in many cases, not very much of a community. It's really more disorganized than you would think of as a community. But then you have a growing growing affluent middle class of black professionals and business people, which is actually getting bigger and bigger and better and more affluent and more influential, and really is a community. And I think that the chances for both the rural and the black middle class are particularly are receptive to what Mr. Trump is advocating. This whole thing about the opportunity zones that he featured last night, for example, that fits right into black entrepreneurship, which is really on the rise. In fact, it's I was looking at some data a couple days ago that are really, it's surprising how many new companies that are being started by black people, and not necessarily just to serve the so-called black community. They're serving everybody, and so in general, I certainly think there's a strong case to be made for your hypothesis there. And what was the other? I think that it's very clear that that speech was geared toward trying to attract those folks. But I will step aside here for a second, and you're listening to the Dr. Larry Show on the Bachelor News Radio Network.
Go Caleb! Come on, hit a homer, Jesse!
Let's go, guys!
Hey, did you guys know that kids who play sports earn more money when they grow up?
Of course. I knew that.
Hey, did you guys know that kids who read books have a bigger vocabulary?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Wow, jinx. Did you guys know that friendly children have more friends?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah,
mm-hmm.
yeah.
That's true. I knew that. Did you guys know that winter babies are better at music?
Everyone knows that.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, pretty obvious.
Yeah, so obvious. Oh, hey, guys, did you know that most people think they're using the right car seat for their kid, but they're not?
Huh, I didn't know that.
I'm pretty sure I knew that.
I'm pretty sure you didn't.
Parents who really know it all know for sure that their child is in the right car seat at the right age and size. Visit safercar.gov/the-right-seat to make sure your child is protected. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Hey, this is L.A. Bachelor reminding you to join us on the Donelson Files with your hosts Tom Donelson and Coco Constantly. Join them and listen to all the topics and discussions on Mondays on WCOMFM.org or on Tuesdays and Wednesdays at blogtalkradio.com/LA Bachelor. It is politics that you've never heard before on the Donelson Files. And if you miss any part of their broadcast, you can listen to the podcast at our website, thebachelorpadnetwork.com.
Yeah, as we were talking, Dr. Larry, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity that sits there. So,
you're listening to the Dr. Larry Show on the Bachelor News Radio Network. We're talking with Tom Donelson, who is the host of the co-host of the Donelson Files, which precedes our show every Wednesday night at 6 o'clock Eastern Time. And also, you're also on at the same time, are you not, on Tuesdays and Thursdays?
Tuesday, we're on Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the block on this particular network. But we're also, remember, Dr. Larry, you and I follow each other at midnight, Monday through Friday on the Bachelor News Radio Network. I'm on midnight. You're on 1 a.m. L.A. time, and I'm on 10 a.m. Eastern time, and you're on 11 a.m. Eastern time as well on the Bachelor News Radio Network. Plus, as well, now anybody can get a copy of any of our podcasts anytime. So we're trying our best to make it easy for the audience to hear whatever we have to say. Exactly right. So yeah. But okay, back to our discussion. So I'd like to change the subject a little bit and get your thoughts on what you think is going to happen to Mr. Romney after his split vote on the impeachment items today. I must say, I think he's signed his own death warrant as far as the Republican Party is concerned, but maybe not. Yeah. Well, I'm going to put it this way. I would say to you, let me see, when did he get? Because he still has time left on his. Oh yeah. So I'd like to put it this way. So it's easy to sit back and say you're finished at this point, but he doesn't. He doesn't have to. Let me put it this way. He doesn't run until 2022, so he's got 2 more years. But I would not be surprised if he gets a challenge, and I would not be surprised that he loses based on this. I mean, I think this will hurt him politically in the future. I think it's also going to hurt him in the Senate. I think that his acceptance by his colleagues is definitely going to be influenced by his departure from tradition here, and by voting against his own president, with whom, by the way, we all know he has a lot of bad feelings anyway. He's already shown himself to be a pretty poor loser, and this is really taking it the next step, I guess. Well, I'm going to say, I mean, his political career at this point, I would say, take a hit. I mean, he definitely is going to get challenged in the primary. I'm never going to say never in politics, because you never know down the road whether or not there'll be another issue that he can see, that he can. There may be an issue or two, or a vote or two, where he can basically say, please forgive me for my last indiscretion. I'll support you on this. We'll see. Yeah. So I guess in politics, you can never say never, but I would say, technically speaking, if somebody was to say to me, his political career, as I probably put on Twitter, R.I.P., rest in peace, his political career. Yeah, I agree. I'm really disappointed in him too, because I thought he had more class than that. But in fact, I thought he was a pretty classy guy until this whole thing with the Trumps came up. But it is what it is. Not much we can do about it. So, well, what else have you? What else did you take away from the acquittal? Obviously, the Dems are sticking to their guns, and
I was listening to a guy a couple hours ago that said that well, we all know that in your heart of hearts, the president did something terribly wrong. It's just that he had the machinery of the Senate was against conviction. Well, I don't think that's true, but he they are sticking to their guns. They're not in the least bit impressed by the fact that he got out of this, and they haven't said, well, let's put bygones be bygones and let's try to make something happen for the country. I don't hear any of that.
Well, let me put it this way. I'm going to say two things. I may say number one, as I stated, there's a lot bigger story going down. You got the John Durham investigation coming up. And here's the thing that comes into play. The basic courts just recently said the warrants used to get, the warrants were illegal that they used on Donald Trump. If that's indeed the case, that means somebody is going to jail. Now, whether it's a mid-level FBI or it goes up to as high as James Comey, I don't know. But somebody's going to jail. When you start seeing indictments, the acquittal aspect not only disappears, but now you got the reverse side of the equation, a point that I made last year. But I talked about Joe Biden's team. I said Joe Biden's got two things. He's got his family corruption, which, I mean, what people don't realize, it's been Biden Incorporated, and his family's done very well while he's been a public official. And if this thing blew up, if, let's say, the Horowitz reports, which it did come out, the Vice of Course things come out, that in fact this may be a bigger issue, that that will overshadow and maybe even put in perspective the reason for the acquittal. And so that's just, my view. Those are the two things I thought. And of course, the problem right now with Joe Biden is he may not make it through Super Tuesday to begin with, so we'll see.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But the Vice of Course issue, that's a totally different story. So that's not a story that no matter how you look at it, it's because you're talking about lying to federal judges to get warrants illegally. You're talking about a case of falsifying evidence, falsifying documents to get warrants. This is what happened. And, and when you put it that way, and you say I was spied on, it's a totally, totally different picture. And that's why I think, to me, one of the things to me is that this does not hurt Donald Trump. It may strengthen him because of that background coming up. And number two, I've been running ads in the Midwest. And let me tell you what has been the response by the Democrats and the super PACs defending those first-time Congress people we targeted. The word impeachment doesn't even come up in their ads. They're not talking impeachment. They're not even defending it. They're basically talking about, hey, we're getting health care done. We're going to talk about lowering health care. We got plans to lower health care. We voted for this bill to lower health care. That's what they're talking about. Those are the ads they're running. They're not running, boy, are we glad we impeached Donald Trump. Because they're, and one of the things, as a political operative, and I'll use this as my bias, people should know that I am a political operative in this, is this. I look at what my opponents do. If I see my opponents running ads not talking about impeachment, that tells me that their internal polling is telling them this is a bad idea. And I have a feeling down that this is going to be, that this perception, because in the end, I don't care how many times you can say he was impeached. Bill Clinton was impeached. But what do we hear about Bill Clinton? He was acquitted. And 20 years down the road, Donald Trump was acquitted.
When is this when are we going to start seeing some action out of the bar? What's the guy's name? The guy in Connecticut.
John Jones.
Yeah. When are we going to
Bill
start
Barr,
seeing some results out of that?
I do not know.
It's surprising to me that it's taken so long.
In a way, I'm not that surprised because you're looking at. I mean, you're talking about a criminal investigation now.
Yeah.
So I don't know the answer to your question where they're at or what they're doing, or even if they've been in front of grand juries. We don't know any of this. What's being done? All I know is they're being invested. The investigation is there, and whether or not they got in front of grand juries, I don't know. It's anybody's guess when it's going to happen. So
it seems like it could be happening right about the time of the just before the conventions. I mean, it was already February, and we're getting ready to get into primaries already. We'll take a break now, and you're listening to the Dr. Larry Show on the Bachelor News Radio Network.
Hey, this is LA Bachelor reminding you if you're looking for real discussion on sports, politics, religion, and other topics, you need to join us on Mondays at 6 p.m. Eastern at WCOMFM.org, on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. at blogtalkradio.com/LA-Bachelor, and on Thursdays at the same web address. Follow us on Facebook at Pad Nation, on Twitter, Pad Nation, the number 2 at Twitter, LinkedIn, and you can email us with your requests, your comments, your concerns, anything you want at our email address at LABachelor with a T, BATCHELOR 40 at gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook and Pad Nation, Instagram, and of course, if you missed any part of our broadcast, make sure you go to thebachelorpadnetwork.com and listen and enjoy the Bachelor Pad.
You're listening to the Dr. Larry Show on the Bachelor News Radio Network, and we're talking to Tom Donelson. And Tom, we were talking about the prospects of the timing, and particularly, I guess, the implications of the investigations that are going on through the Justice Department, it seems, I mean, the timing of that could be, as you say, could be critical. I mean, if we suddenly start getting a lot of headlines about trials and convictions of the swamp rats that they're called by some of our colleagues, that could really make a lot of difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess I don't know. I mean, they've been tight-lipped. They've been tight-lipped, but but my view. That's why I think, quite frankly, the impeachment in the end may not only not hurt Trump, it may help him. And once you start seeing these indictments, and you start looking, in that regard, I truly think the shift changes away from impeachment to the violation of civil liberties and the vice of course, which people can truly understand. And the question is, can you tar the Democratic Party with this kind of abuse of civil liberties? I would say yes, but I'm just saying that, this is what you're going to be looking at possibly in the summer. I'm just guessing, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't.
Well, we got this acquittal behind us, but there's a lot of predictions that the accusations are not going to stop, and that we could actually be seeing another if not an impeachment series of investigations or hearings, we at least something that would be equivalent. And
well, let me give you my theory. My thing is this. Now, Coco and I have a disagreement on this, but my view is Adam Schiff got his head handed to him by the Trump defense team. He just literally got his head handed to him, and he spent the last 3 years working on all of this, whether it's the Russian collusion case, this case, and my view of Schiff, and I'm going to give it from my personal opinion of what I've observed of the guy, is that I don't think he liked the idea of himself getting this badly beat by the Trump defense team. Again, a lot of people say they're not going to disagree. You look at the transcript. You look at he managed to irritate a good portion of your moderate Republicans with his behavior. So it's, and so my point will be is he won't be satisfied, and he'll be like a hound dog that will spend the rest of his career, as long as Trump is in office, he'll keep trying to impeach him. I think there's a vengeful side to this guy. I don't view this guy in a positive way, and that's just my gut instinct based on what I've observed in the last 3 years. And I think, quite frankly, he led. It's interesting to me is like I think Nancy Pelosi deep down is probably sitting back thinking right now, this is backfiring, because I think she didn't. She kind of made it clear she was not promoting the impeachment in the beginning. She certainly wasn't promoting it early 2019, and now that it and there's a part of me think it was forced on her. And now she's got to live with it.
Well, she certainly came off looking pretty poorly, and of course her behavior last night wasn't any help either. But I think as long as this Congress lasts in Democrat hands, we're going to see a lot more of Adam Schiff. And even though his whole, apparently his entire motivation for trying to get the spotlight was to become prominent enough that when Dianne Feinstein decided to retire, or in fact she had decided to retire, that he would be the logical prospect to take her place, and this first of all, she then changed her mind. She decided she's going to run again, I guess. At least she's considering it strongly. And secondly, with what's happened now and where he is now, he certainly doesn't look like the leading candidate for the Senate nomination for her seat. So I think your basic analysis carries over not only to his ambition, to his condition, but also to his ambition, and that would be a real driver, I would think, to have him keep on making as much trouble as possible.
Well, here's the thing. Dianne Feinstein, I think her term ends in 2024. So he's got 4 more years. We got about 4 more years before any decision. And she'll be close to 90, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't see her running for another term after that.
Yeah, I don't either.
So I just don't see that at all. But
he's only good. He's in the House, so he's got to run again this fall.
Yeah, but let me put it this way: he's in a plus 20 Democrat seat. It's not like he's in danger. So I wouldn't Zach. That's not going to be his worry. That's not going to be his worry. And certainly, the advantage of being in California and Adam Schiff in California is that unless something dramatically changes between now and 2024. It's going to be very difficult for a Democrat not to lose a statewide seat, regardless who you are.
You're saying not to lose the seat?
Yep. Yeah. No, I mean, like I said,
you think the Democrats? I mean, the Californians would elect a Republican senator?
No. I said it would be difficult for him not to lose the race in California.
You mean in his congressional district? Yeah.
No, but in the Senate. I mean, if he runs in 2020 for the Senate, the chances of any Democrat who gets the nomination winning is a 90% probability.
Right.
That's I used a double negative, and so I wasn't exactly clear. And so, there's no doubt on that score. He's going to, but beyond that, my point would be, maybe beyond that, because like I said, I mean, here's the question that comes into play. If Donald Trump wins re-election, and I'm going to say right now it's a 60-40 that he does, as long as the economy holds, he's going to have a pretty good shot of winning re-election. This is the week that clinched it. This will be that week, February the 3rd to the 7th, that clinched it. Between the acquittal, the disaster in Iowa, the fiasco in Iowa caucus, which has implications, and the results of the Iowa caucus, which has implications down to the race. Whereas we talked about something on our show, something I guess I'm going to ask you a question. Do you ever remember in your lifetime a brokered convention?
Yeah, well, the Democrat convention in 1960 was pretty close. And
it was close.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, it was close, but I thought but my view has always been that it was the first ballot, was it not? For John Kennedy?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Say again.
Yeah, I thought in 1960 that John Kennedy won on the first ballot.
Yeah, but there was a lot of politicking with Johnson before that, and it was. I don't know if it was brokered in the sense that you're talking about going more than one ballot, but I think the Eisenhower-Taft one in 1952 did go more than one ballot. But again, I'm not sure about that. It's been a long time since I heard about. I mean, I can't remember it personally, but I think that's what I read sometime. But anyway, I think the brokering goes on these days. Anyway, goes on before the convention actually starts, and that, of course, is kind of behind very, very closed doors.
Mm-hmm. Well, like I said, let me look real quick here. Then I'm trying to think.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I'm trying to look this thing. I'll tell you what. Why don't we kind of take a quick break here, and then maybe I'll have the answer. Then also Larry will be joining us. Larry Freese will be joining us for the last 10 minutes of the show.
Right. You're listening to the Dr. Larry Show on the Bachelor News Radio Network.
If you want to hear another view of the latest developments in Trump's Washington, listen to the Dr. Larry Show. Every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Dr. Larry is a former businessman, entrepreneur, college president, and author who provides background and context for current events and trends in politics, education, foreign policy, and religion from a conservative perspective. Tune in and hear the other side as Dr. Larry talks with Washington insiders exclusively on blogtalkradio.com and the podcast at thebachelorpadnetwork.com.
You're listening to the Dr. Larry Show on the Bachelor News Radio Network, as advertised, and the guest is Larry Fries. He's, I guess you're with us now, Larry?
I am, and sorry because I had the numbers transposed and had to go back to a previous resource to get the right numbers. But here I am.
Oh my goodness! Well, we certainly missed you.
I'm sorry, and perhaps we can continue this discussion next week.
Yes. Well, while we do have you, we have at least a few minutes. What's your takeaway from the events of yesterday and today, the State of the Union, and then followed by the acquittal? I'm sure you have some comments that would be interest to our listeners.
Yeah, there are, obviously 3 events that have taken place now in the last few days. You have the Iowa caucuses, you have the State of the Union, and then the acquittal. And it's a very interesting series of events. With respect to the Iowa caucuses, real quick, I think that the winners were the Republican Party. Yeah. Because there was an Iowa implosion that took place, and there is no clear front runner still with the Democrats. The interesting development there is that there is a moderate, or not even moderate, it's really the left side of that party, the left philosophies of that party are coming, to now be the more dominant voice in the party. And that's why I think that you see Bernie Sanders and Pete Buttigieg really having the upper hand, at least at the moment. If you sort of think through on a longer-term basis, in the end, Pete Buttigieg is not going to be a major presence in Super Tuesday. So that's just a quick summary there. I think Joe Biden is going to do better in New Hampshire, but he'll have his big day on Super Tuesday. Bernie Sanders is still a person to obviously keep an eye on, although the Democrats seemingly are trying to find a way not to have an independent become the nominee of the Democrat Party. So they're doing their level best to try to find a way to be able to have somebody come to the forefront as a clear Democrat moderate person, and that's where Joe Biden and Michael Bloomberg become potentially those 2 individuals. With respect to the State of the Union, I thought that it was difficult for people who would listen objectively to be able to walk away without feeling as if the president is working for the entire United States. If you think about just a few of the highlights, wage increases for people across the country, median household income higher than it has been in a long time, trade deals that bring jobs to people in the United States, opportunity zones for people in disadvantaged areas, educational choice, a big, Democrat issue, I think. So it's hard to argue against that. And then, of course, you can go through the litany of other unemployment rate to the lowest for blacks, Hispanics, and women. And we can rehearse many other things, highest labor participation rate in a long time, housing starts, consumer confidence, all these leading economic indicators that are important to the totality of the American population. And so while people might not like him from a personal standpoint, that's okay. You don't have to like the president, but it's hard to argue with his results. And then, of course, you have today the acquittal, which was a foregone conclusion. And in the end, it was understood really that part of what was going on was that this was an attempt to be able to block in vulnerable Republicans in purple states that might be able to have an opportunity to flip the Senate back to Democrat control. But I think when you pull the 3 things together and you see the performance of the Democrats in Iowa, the prolonged issues related to impeachment, the Mueller report, and other antics by the Democrats, that it really hurts them. And in that regard, that's why the Republicans, I think, come off on top And I think the American people will demonstrate that in November, Dr. Larry.
What do you think about your own senator splitting his vote?
Yeah, of course, I will tell you right out front that I voted for Mitt Romney in the general election against Barack Obama. I felt like he was a good, solid choice. Of course, I have followed him since then, and I have been disappointed in many of his comments, statements, his rhetoric, and, of course, his lack of respect, toward the presidency. And it has become clear that he has a personal animosity toward the president. And so I was disappointed to see that he voted guilty on Article of Impeachment number 1. The interesting development here is that there is a state legislator that has introduced a bill whereby the state of Utah could, after 1 year of service, recall senators if there is as much as a 25% voter populace support for that recall. The timing is interesting. It is said that it's not specifically because of Mitt Romney, but you have to think curiously about whether or not indeed that's the case. So there's some interesting developments out here because people are not happy with the way that he's representing the state right now, Dr. Larry.
So what do you think his future is?
Well, of course, if this bill gets passed, it will be interesting to see if there is enough momentum to recall Mitt Romney. I will tell you that having voted for him as president, I happen to find myself at the moment in the 25% camp that would be needed in order to recall him, because I think that he does not represent us or, frankly, even Republican values right now. I think that he has found himself on more of a Democratic slant, and there have been a number of issues that have been kept quiet. His leading advisor during the presidential campaign is connected to Burisma. Mitt Romney has a son who has ties and connections with Burisma.
Really?
There are some issues that query why he made this vote, and it may be that there are certain skeletons in his closet that the Democrats know and have compelled him to take the stance that he took. Now the Democrats can claim that there was a bipartisan vote to convict the president, and they wanted to be able to say that.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'd never heard about a tie with Burisma.
Yeah, it's like the others who have ties to Burisma. He has a son who has connections with Burisma, and of course, if you've held a certain standard about those connections with the Democrats, then you have to apply that same standard, depending, of course, on the role and whether or not there was other, developments associated with that. That becomes part of the question. But those things are being looked into now by independent citizen reporters who have already posted information relative to this, and so you can find the information.
That is really that's a real scoop as far as this part of the country is concerned. Well, we're run out of time, and I appreciate you that you finally came in. Why don't you come in next week, and we'll have more of a chance to talk about these various issues, and I'm sure between now and then we'll have some other things to talk about. So
I will be happy to do that. Thank you.
And let's be sure you get the right telephone number, so that we can start off right at the beginning and go right through and we'll look forward to talking to you then. And this is Dr. Larry signing off today from the Dr. Larry Show. God bless America, and good night.